Perhaps the most notorious case was the sniper killing of this man, Ibrahim Abu Thu-rayeh. He was a double amputee.
The declaration of Jerusalem as a capital of the State of Israel clearly diminished any hope for peace in the Middle East.
We're the greatest thing in the world, not because of anything we've done. We just are. And let me tell it to you over and over and over and over again, that we just are the best. That's nationalism.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Trump decision to award Jerusalem to the so-called Jewish state of Israel has been met with worldwide protest. And in Palestinian areas, Israeli soldiers have killed Palestinians because of the protest. Perhaps the most notorious case was the sniper killing of this man, Ibrahim Abu Thu-rayeh. He was a double amputee and behind the wall in Gaza, but somehow considered such a terrible threat to Israeli forces that he was shot dead on December 15th. He had been a fisherman, but lost his legs in 2008 during the Israeli assault on Gaza of that year. Abu Thu-rayeh was 29 years old. Read the bitter article about this killing by Israeli journalist Gideon Levy. We link to it at thestruggle.org. This is Ahed Tamimi. Her family leads popular resistance to the occupation in Nabi Saleh, Palestine. She was arrested in the dead of night a few days ago, supposedly because she slapped and kicked an Israeli soldier and told him to get out of her town. This took place on the day that a soldier shot her cousin, Ahed Tamimi, in the face. When Ahed's mother went to inquire about the arrest, she was arrested too, reportedly because she had distributed a video of the slapping. Reportedly, Ahed's father, Bassem, was arrested in the courtroom during her court appearance. The group Ahvaz has a petition calling for the release of Ahed. So far, they have 77,000 signers. We link to it at thestruggle.org. There have been several protests in Connecticut of Trump's announcement on Jerusalem. One took place in Bridgeport in McLeavey Square. The title was, "Jerusalem is the Capital of Peace."
My name is Ahmed Ibrahim. I am honored to be the president of the Bridgeport Islamic Community Center, one of the co-hosts of this event with CARE Connecticut and many other faith-based and other organizations like our friends from Answer Coalition and other organizations joining us today. The declaration of Jerusalem as a capital of the State of Israel clearly diminished any hope for peace in the Middle East. If anyone is looking for and hoping for peace in the Middle East, that declaration is totally against that hope, totally diminished that hope. Not only that, it's not just harmful to Palestinian people, it's not just harmful to the peace process in the Middle East, it is harmful to even the basic U.S. interest. We are not here against our Jewish friends. We are not against our Jewish brothers and sisters. We are not against Judaism, the religion. We as Muslims and non-Muslims here, I am sure, we have many Jewish friends here. We work with Jewish organizations in this city, in this state, all around the country. We strongly believe that this conflict has nothing to do with Judaism, the religion. This conflict is against a political movement, the Zionism, that is hijacking the religion of Judaism for political reason. And we want to start with our Imam, Imam Muhammad Abdul Ati, the Imam of the Bridgeport Islamic Community Center. He will tell you why.
So Palestinian, the land, this piece of land in 1948, it was full with its people. Not thousands of people, but millions of people. They used to live there. They have country, they have international airport, they have embassies all over the world, they have everything. But there is some people, they try to change this by taking this land from its people and expel them out from their countries, from their houses. That's why there is a lot of Palestinian people all over the world. They are carrying something very valuable. They are carrying the key for their houses. Even if there is tens of years past, but they still have the key because they believe one day they will go back to their countries. One day they will. And the evil will never continue forever. And the other side of the fact, it's part of our faith. Part of our faith. We have to be against the wrong. We have to be against the evil.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon all of you. My name is Aziz Siyal. I'm a former journalist from Pakistan, and I have honored to be Vice President of BICC. 2 days ago, a Palestinian 29-year-old wheelchair-bound protester, Ibrahim Abu Thu-rayeh, who had lost both of his legs and kidneys in an Israeli airstrike in 2008, was shot in the head in the wheelchair. Israel does not even allow Palestinians to protest.
So it is the political existence of Israel over a Palestinian land. Golda Meir, a very famous prime minister of Israel in one time, she said, I was a Palestinian Jews living in Palestine. So the Jews were living in Palestine in peace, side by side with their brothers and sisters of Muslims and Christians. So keep that in mind when you look at the thing, when you watch a documentary about Jerusalem. People were living in peace together. Never that we said the Jews are not allowed to come and pray in their holy lands. Never happened. It's
Al-Quds in Arabic, meaning the Holy One, or Beit al-Maqdis, the home or abode of the Holy One. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city of peace, the abode of home or peace. These names perfectly exemplify the character of this great city. It's these names that sum up the feeling that goes through you when you walk into the old city, when you walk the same smooth cobblestone alleys that hundreds of prophets walk down. When you enter the old city, you're transported back in time. A time when Muslims, Christians, Jews lived in peace and understanding. When people of those religions would come as they go, worship as they please, live as they please, it was and still can be a sanctuary. But then you're immediately snapped back to reality. When you look out, when you notice the separation wall from outside of the bus window, separating illegal Israeli settlements from the rest of the city, then the bus stops at the infamous Kalandia checkpoint, one of the biggest checkpoints in the occupied Palestine. Armed Israeli soldiers come on the bus and check your IDs. If you have a Palestinian ID, you get kicked off the bus and walk through extra security. Many get turned away. They walk back to their villages, their cities, their homes. Some of them get beat or humiliated right there at the checkpoint.
The speaker talked about BDS boycotts. These things are important, and we should be working on them. I know a lot of you work for the city or the state, and unfortunately some of your money is helping this oppression. The treasurer of Connecticut, and I'm sure the treasurer before her, has been investing in Israel. And the last time we looked, 30 million in stocks and bonds. And then another 30 million, they own Israeli shekels. You collectively own Israeli shekels and help fund the occupation. And this is something that the people have been trying to protest. For years we've tried to have a meeting with the treasurer of Connecticut, and she won't take a meeting. Instead, there's all kinds of threats. They'll make BDS illegal. They have been doing this in 21 states, have these measures. And if they bring this up, we're going to call on you to deal with this.
Brother Dr. Abdul Shakur Abu Zaid was born and raised in the West Bank, I believe. He's a US citizen now. And I remember last time I talked to him, he told me last time he tried to visit Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, in Al-Aqsa, and he was denied.
Dr. Ibrahim spoke about my trip to Palestine, I think 4 or 5 months ago, and actually it was a business trip. So I had to do some business in Jerusalem for my employer, and at the checkpoint, when I crossed from Jordan to Palestine, I asked for a visa. On my American passport, they refused to give me a visa. They said, you are Palestinian, you are not allowed to have a visa. So this is the first discrimination against American person for one reason, that he is a Palestinian too. They refused. Then I said, I'll manage. I entered as a Palestinian, and I had my cousin to drive me to Jerusalem. I came to the first checkpoint, I was denied. I gave him my American passport. They said, where is the visa? I said, I don't have a visa. He said, you cannot enter, you have to have a visa. Then my cousin drove me around to other checkpoint, and we were lucky they did not ask this time. So I managed to go to Jerusalem, and I spent 3 days and nights there in Jerusalem. If any of you visit there, if Mr. Trump, you call him president, I call him Mr., okay, go to a second, or a building has 2nd floors, 3 floors, not too high, does not need to be no high, and he looked from the window, he will see all the Arab, Christian, Muslim heritage. He will not even see some of the Jewish heritage, because the Jewish heritage is claimed to be under the ground. They see all they see all the churches. They'll see the holy mosques there. They see the tradition of all Arabs and Romans and people from history.
There is many efforts to try to educate the American people about what's going on, and that's one of the things that Tree of Life tries to do. For the last 14 years, we have taken groups of Americans to Palestine so that they can see for themselves, witness for themselves, because unfortunately our mainstream media really doesn't cover this in a fair way. We need to support the boycott, divestment, sanction movement. That needs to be part of what we call on our congresspeople and our senators and our state legislators to support. Years ago, I was involved in an effort when the South African people were fighting to overcome apartheid. And we utilized tools like boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. Here in Connecticut, we passed through our state legislature a law that provided that the state of Connecticut had to divest in the investments in corporations that were active in South Africa. We did that to support the freedom, the democracy, the equality within South Africa. The same thing needs to happen now in connection with Israel. Right? We need to put pressure on Israel. And we can do this in a nonviolent, peaceful way. But when it comes to this particular issue, even now we have legislators that are passing laws to try to say that we can't even engage in a nonviolent struggle against Israel's colonization. They're passing laws that are saying it's wrong to do BDS. It's wrong to engage in boycott, divestment, and sanctions. This is totally wrong, and it's completely contrary to the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And we need to keep our eyes out on this, and we need to make sure that if such a bill comes to the state of Connecticut, that we stand together and we get in touch with our legislators and say, no, you can't support this.
One of them, our sister Nawal, with us today, who want to share her personal experience under occupation with you, and she promised me she will be short. We know it's getting cold here. Sister Nawal.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I was born and raised in Palestine. I lived the first Intifada. I was arrested by the Jewish occupation. I was tortured. My brother was shot. We lived it all. I was 13 years old, which, you know, you can't do that to a minor. You can't arrest a 13-year-old just for standing there, wanted to enter her school and wanted to stand there even though there was like the big tanks sitting there for us, so we wouldn't have our education. That's their plan, uneducated, you know, kids. So I lived it all, and I just wanted to share this with everyone, and I do share it everywhere I go. I have a lot of stories to tell because people here, as one of the speakers mentioned, that they don't know, they're naive, all what they hear is the media, the news, and they don't know. We need to educate our kids about Palestine, about Al-Quds, Jerusalem. We need to make them prepare. If anyone come and talk to them, they know what to answer. And to be strong, not to be afraid. My daughter 2 days ago, she was at a restaurant. She was approached by a Jewish guy. I guess he's with whatever going on in Palestine. And she, of course, you know, he was like, oh, you're from Palestine? And she defended herself, but she told me, Mama, we need to be more educated. So please, please, have the time to educate your kids, to let them know what's really going on, because no one do. All what they show is a rock coming to the soldiers' feet, and oh, that might hurt them. And, you know, when the bullet come to us, they don't share that. They don't show it. So that's my, you know, voice, and I will keep it high, and I will tell everyone about our life in Palestine. Thank you.
We have two more speakers. One of them is one of our Muslim activists in DC, and we're honored that he's visiting us today, Brother Maurice Salakan.
This green here, this represents what Palestine looked like under the control of the Palestinians in 1946. 2 years. 2 years before Israel became a state. The green represents Palestinian controlled land that they had been in possession of for many centuries. As you see, in these three succeeding planes, 1947, this was right after the partition, how much the green has shrunk. And then we go to 1949 through 67. And then the last one is 2000. It's been 17 years since that last plane, and it's even worse than that now. What we have in occupied Palestine is ethnic cleansing and genocide. This is what it is. This is what it is. One of my friends is a woman by the name of Allison Weir. She started an organization called If Americans Knew. This is a very, very profound question. If Americans knew. We must make more of an effort, really, to educate people that just don't know how their tax dollars are being spent.
All right, thank you. I'm going to be very, very brief. I just want to reaffirm 4 things that we know. 1, Jerusalem is Palestine. Yay! 2, Palestine is the land from the river to the sea, with no exceptions. 3, Palestine will be free. And 4, it is the Palestinian people who will free Palestine. It is the struggle, it is the fight, it is the will of the Palestinian people that will liberate their homeland and open it back up from the river to the sea. But we have work to do here to support that struggle, to support that victory that will happen. We have work to do here because American Israeli terror reaches our cities too.
And now the conclusion of Timothy Snyder's talk for promoting enduring peace. It's Mark Shafer Lecture. Snyder continues to talk about the lessons he's learned by his study over the decades of tyranny and nationalism.
The other thing which is going on, which is getting worse, is the transmission of fiction. And by fiction, I don't just mean things that aren't true. I mean, there are a lot of things that aren't true, like my high school football injury. But by fiction, I mean fiction is not just an untruth. An untruth is something you could apologize for, right? You could say, so it's critical that the President of the United States never apologizes for an error. So you're moving out of the Enlightenment into something else. In enlightened politics, or enlightened anything, you make a mistake, you recognize that there's a mistake made, and you apologize for it. You issue a correction. And when you issue the correction, you're accepting that there is a real world out there. It's not just that you lie systematically, it's that you never apologize for it. That's the most important thing. Because what you're trying to engender is a world of fiction in which there isn't actually truth or factuality as a check. That's the important thing. The living in the world where it just isn't clear if there is anything that's true or not, right? And there are some real pioneers, in that. And one of them is in the Oval Office. That's where we are. So let me close with the prediction part by talking about Russia. So one of the things that people ask me about a lot is how to think about Russia. Like on the one hand, did they interfere and change the outcome of our elections? On the other hand, isn't it all our fault? And I say, we don't have to choose, right? Probably their interference did change the outcome of the election, but the only reason why it was so close in the first place had to do with problems in our own political system, in our own society. And the thing, the really shocking thing, I think, the really shocking thing is this. It worked better than they thought it was going to work because we are much more like them than anybody thought. That's the lesson. That, for example, if you look at, I'll just take the most basic primitive level thing. If you look at levels of economic inequality, there is only one country which is giving Russia a run for its money right now, and that's the United States of America. Right? There's only one country which is making a run at Russia for how much wealth is concentrated in the top 1%, top 0.1%, top 0.01%, and that is the United States of America. I can develop the argument out from there, but that's the basic thing. The fiction worked better on us because we are more like them than we think we are, which means that we should think about Russia, I think, not so much as this, it is a hostile force trying to destroy us, but that's not the most useful way to think about it. The most useful way to think about Russia today is that's what a political fiction producing oligarchy looks like. If you see it that way, then you can learn a little bit what to guard against. Okay, so that's so much, okay, I don't want to say so much for the future because the whole point of the talk is that there is a future, that a politics of responsibility is happening. But the last few lessons are about how to head off the most dangerous conjunctions. They are lesson 17, listen for dangerous words. The dangerous words are terrorism and extremism. Emergency is another good one. These are the words that are used to signal a regime change. Something happens, doesn't happen, maybe happens. State of emergency, have to do something about the extremism. In the 21st century, it's usually extremism. There's some law that's passed against extremism where extremism is never carefully defined. Extremism can be anything. You were all definitely extremists, by the way. You were all extremists. You were definitely all extremists. In terms of the kinds of laws that are on the books now about extremism, we are all extremists. Terrorism is another good one in the 21st century. Not that it's not a real thing in the world, of course it is, but it's used as a justification for changing regimes. That's lesson 17, is listen for those words. Lesson 18, be calm when the unthinkable arrives. This is the one that I've been repeating over and over again, trying to make it a self-defeating prophecy, because the way that the Reichstag fire works in Germany in 1933, the lesson that is page 1 on the authoritarian playbook, which is available at Amazon for $4.99. That's also not true. Okay, but on page 1 of the authoritarian playbook is Reichstag fire, and Reichstag fire means there's some kind of act of terrorism. It's unclear where it came from, who did it. You declare a state of emergency. You end a republic. You start something else. The state of emergency, which was declared in Germany in 1933, lasts until 1945. Right. One act of terror, how do you respond? How does the government respond is one question. The meaningful question is, how do we respond? And if we know that there's a politics to this, that an act of terror, or for that matter, an aggressive war that we start, or a defensive war that we're in, whatever it is, some exceptional moment, there is a politics to this. And the politics is that the head of state says, this is so exceptional that I need you to accept that your rights are going to be suspended for a moment. And that's the moment where you act or you lose everything. So that's lesson 18. Lesson 19 is be a patriot. And I'm just going to read a little bit from this one. The distinction I'm trying to make in lesson 19, I'm not going to read lesson 20 because I think lesson 20 is a good one to read by yourself. But the point I'm trying to make in lesson 19 is the difference between patriotism and nationalism, which has a lot to do with the difference between the politics of eternity and what I'm calling the politics of responsibility. Nationalism is the politics of eternity. It says, all that ever happens is that those bad outsiders come to try to take our national innocence away. And that just happens over and over and over again. We're the greatest thing in the world, not because of anything we've done. We just are. And let me tell it to you over and over and over and over again, that we just are the best. That's nationalism. Patriotism is something a little bit different, or I would say actually a lot different. I'm just going to close with a few sentences from the book about this. So, a nationalist encourages us to be our worst, and then tells us that we are the best. A nationalist, quote, although endlessly brooding on power, victory, defeat, revenge, wrote Orwell, tends to be, quote, uninterested in what happens in the real world, unquote. Nationalism is relativist, since the only truth is the resentment we feel when we contemplate others. As the novelist Danilo Kish put it, nationalism, quote, has no universal values, aesthetic or ethical. A patriot, by contrast, wants the nation to live up to its ideals, which means asking us to be our best selves. A patriot must be concerned with the real world, which is the only place where his country can be loved and sustained. A patriot has universal values, standards by which he judges his nation, always wishing it well, and wishing that it would do better. Democracy failed in Europe in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and it is failing not only in much of Europe, but in many parts of the world today. It is that history and experience that reveals to us the dark range of our possible futures. A nationalist will say, it can't happen here, which is the first step toward disaster. A patriot says, it could happen here, but that we will stop it. Thank you very much.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.